Hello, phonetics students. I hope you're enjoying your, who knows what to call it, the time that you have given, the strike. But I hope you understand that phonetics is not going to go away. That in the English department we are thinking about ways to enable you to, complete your semester and finish the work you've started. So this video is sort of a part of that. I'm going to sort of have two interventions. This is the first, just fairly brief presentation of adjectival ative endings. These are, I would say, the ative. This is on page 40 of your brochure, which you have. Fortunately, you have this wonderful brochure. This is going to help us through this. Derived adjectives. This is part 5 on page 40. Derived adjectives and ative. So I'm just going to talk about that, present that, and then I'm going to show you where you have exercises to work on this aspect, this slightly complicated aspect of English. And then we're going to, and then in another video, I'm going to move on. These are the things we would have covered this week, the new things we would have covered this week in class. We're going to move on to American English. There's 2 sections on American English. That'll be in the following video. But I would just like to assure you that we haven't. We're following the situation in the English department. Le départ. We are going to, I can't tell you what's going to happen with our final exam, but I will inform you, keep you informed as to what's happening as we know more. There we have it. So now, down to business. We're going to look at these derived. Once again, we're on page 40. You can follow this. Once again, this is a fairly dense presentation. I'm going to sort of expand on it so that you can sort of see what's going on. So what's going on here? We have, in a sense, we can say that with ative, ative. I'm just going to say ative, because that's what it sounds like when you say it, ative. With this ending, right? It's there's kind of 2 parts to it, right? If you look at it, this is what we call morphology or meaning, the parts of words, if you prefer, or we have sort of a case of complex derivation. We have the suffix ate, it, and then we have iv, right? So we have so we might ask ourselves, so how is this a stress imposing ending or is this a mixed ending? In a sense, we could call it a mixed ending because we can't say that there's a rule associated with this ending. And so this is sort of like what we've seen, if you remember, when we look at, OUS, INE, right? What we call adjectival mixed endings, where to determine where stress occurs, we couldn't just say, ooh, this ending assigns stress on the final or the penultimate or the antepenultimate syllable. It didn't work that way. In the way that it worked for stress-imposing endings or strong endings, if you prefer. There isn't a rule associated with the ending. That's why those endings were called mixed. And this is similar. The difference, of course, is with OUS, AR, AL, INE, these endings, ANT, ENT, these mixed endings. We looked for what we called a pre-final consonant cluster, right? Something like orchestral. We have AL, -al, that's a mixed ending, and the stress occurs on the penultimate syllable because of the presence of str, orchestral, right? In that what we call that pre-final position, because of the presence of that consonant cluster in that position, the pre-final position before the final syllable. Thus, we call it a pre-final consonant cluster. There's a shift in the place of primary stress. It is not going to occur on the antepenultimate syllable, which is a sort of default position, but it will occur on the penultimate syllable. It will be attracted towards that consonant cluster. So that's we've explained this before and we've already had a test on it. So this is just to say that this is a similar phenomenon. When I say this is similar, insofar as we have to say it depends. Okay, we have ative. I can't just, I say, where does the stress occur? He says, well, we have to look at the kind of ate we have, right? That's the idea. Okay, so and there's sort of this is a little bit involved. There's this is we're nearing the end. We're basically at the end of our semester, so we've saved this. This is sort of the icing on the cake. This is there's 3 cases, and we have to really kind of pay attention to what's going on with derivation here. Okay, so the first case is when we have a long word with 3 or more syllables, right? And we have a verbal ate, right? So the example that we have here on page 40 is that we have, so you can read along if you like, we have communicate, right? And from communicate, we have communicative, okay? So as you remember, when we have a verb, well, any word really, with 3 or more syllables with the ate ending, the stress, that is a stress-imposing ending, ate, right? In this case, when we have a word with 3 or more syllables, it will assign stress on the antepenultimate syllable, meaning the rule for ate is going to be the 100 stress pattern, right? And that's what we see with communicate. Communicate, pa-pa-pa, the pa-pa-pa. It means this 100 stress pattern is the ending assigned stress on the antepenultimate syllable is what we have, communicate. And you can see it here, communicate, right? You look at that word, look at that example, follow that there. Okay. So what happens is, when this happens, when the ative, we have the ate in a, let's call it a polysyllabic word, right? And we add iv, the stress doesn't move. That's all. So we have communicate, communicative, right? So, and that means it'll fall on the pre-antepenultimate syllable. You can just say that for justification, you can just say when we have ative, right, that occurs in a word that derives from a polysyllabic word, right? Then it will the place of stress doesn't change. That's what we have there. Okay, just a reminder, there's some exceptions. We have demonstrative, indicative, interrogative, correlative, alternative. We don't say demonstrative, we don't say indicative, we don't say interrogative, right? Correlative, and alternative. Sorry, of course, there's always a good number of exceptions. Okay, there's another case, and notice this serves as a useful reminder for the ate ending. If you remember, when we looked at ate, we said that it behaves differently in 2-syllable words, right? And this depends on the category of word, the grammatical category. For example, if we have, if you remember, when we had 2-syllable verbs, we have the O1 stress pattern, which means that the ending ate will be stressed. And the examples that we have here are going to be, we had, for example, negate. Right. Okay. To nier, his statement negated what he said before. Right. Okay. So here we have negate O1 stress pattern. No problem. Okay. Fine. Now in this case, when we add the iv, there will be a shift in the place of stress. The stress will occur on the antepenultimate syllable. Okay. So we don't say negative. Right. We say negative. That's all really. We can. Another example of this would be relate. Right. O1. Notice when we say on dit quoi, un parent, quelqu'un qui est de sa famille, we say, he's a relative, right? We don't say a relative, okay? So that's all. Of course, there's an exception. We say create, we don't say creative, we say creative. Okay, there's that hiatus between EA. And we have an exception, all right? So that's the significant exception. Otherwise, it's pretty smooth sailing. And now we have our third case. You're thinking, wow, this is a third case in which it's a case of what we call fake derivation. And this is sort of like when kids make up words. Sometimes I wish I could think of an example of this. I don't know. Kids sometimes make up words that sound like real words, right? This is kind of like that. For example, let's say when we have the best, if we think of provoke, right? Okay, fine. We don't say provocate. This doesn't exist. So what we're saying is provocative doesn't derive from provocate, right? So that means cases 1 and 2, they don't apply. We're not dealing with a word in ative that derives from a word in ate, right? Now in that case, what we do is we sort of skip a step but that does derive from the word provoke, right? Provocative doesn't derive from provocate because that word does not exist. So it's sort of a case of fake derivation, right? There's sort of this word that is sort of a middle word that isn't there. But what happens in this case is the stress occurs, right, in the word that isn't an ATE word, that from which the word in ative derives from, right? So it's provoke, right? And that syllable oak is going to be stressed, right? An O1 stress pattern, and that it's going to be that same syllable that's going to be stressed. So provoke, provocative, the same position. Voke, voc. Now you'll notice there's a shift. Provoke, you can hear that, right? And you can see that we have a stressed syllable with a single consonant followed by a mute E, right? You're familiar with O is the long value for O, right? That's the long value here, right? Provoke, O. It sounds like it. It is. That's what it is. But notice there that this will no longer be pronounced as the long value, but as the short value in the derived word. So provoke becomes provocative, right? So there is a shift in the value of the way that this syllable is pronounced, no longer long, but short. But the position of stress remains the same. That's essentially it. So I hope that's clear. You will find exercises on this. You can sort of verify. Hopefully we'll have the time. You can ask questions. You can write an email with questions about this on page 15. Try to find examples, and you can verify these yourself. You can look in a dictionary. You know how to use dictionaries to check stress patterns. You might want to. So on page 15 on the top, part 3, word stress, words in ative. So you can just do those. See how that goes. And that's it. Okay, so the next video will be about the differences between American, British, English, and that will be, I'll send that at the same time. So take care.